Beyond the gates, spoilers tease that Kenneth is harboring a tremendous secret. A revelation so explosive it could reshape every bond, every lie, every fractured heart. The town's undercurrent hums with it. Kenneth's silence guards more than his own history. It conceals the truth about his blood, a truth that connects him to a past too painful, too shameful to articulate. Kenneth drifts through the middle of the day like a ghost tethered to a life he can't fully grasp. He works at the hardware store, keeps to himself, plays music at night in a battered guitar. But each chord, each pause in his voice, bears the weight of something unspoken. He's haunted by dreams of a woman under a bridge, eyes hollow, clutching photographs of two children, him and someone else. Fragments of memory he can't place. A lullaby that stops him cold. A name he barely remembers, Madison. Madison has her own keys to the same haunting melody. She volunteers at the shelter, organizes donation drives, smiles and chats, but avoids eye contact with Kenneth. They live the same small geography yet exist in parallel orbits. She hears Kenneth's name, sees him by chance, a glimpse in the mirror of the liquor store window, and her heart leaps with strange warmth and equal hesitation. But she remembers nothing except a hollow ache she cannot satisfy with explanations. June's descent into homelessness became the anchor for their fractured family. She was once the pillar, PTA president, Sunday school teacher, town volunteer. Then life cracked open. A scandal in another city, rumors. The foundation collapsed. Court battles for custody. June lost Kenneth, lost Madison. Finally, the storm home, reputation, everything gone. She was evicted, but kept the photographs, one of two smiling children, the other younger, clinging to her skirt. No dates, no names. She recognized them as belonging to her flesh, her blood. Kenneth and Madison. But she couldn't reclaim them legally. She watched from a distance, Kenneth in hardware store aisles, Madison organizing food banks. She would approach them but freeze, embarrassed to be the homeless woman she became. And each day without making contact deepened the divide. Kenneth, in his nights, sorts broken guitars in his garage. He remembers those lullabies too. He sometimes hums them. What he doesn't know is that June sang those lullabies to him, cradled him on her hip, but that was before he was taken away. Kenneth was adopted by a local couple almost 2 decades ago. Madison by a different family in a neighboring county. Their shared origin remains erased from their memories. The photograph was her only testament. But one day, the photo vanishes. June scrambles through her bag, her dumpster safe, but it's gone. She panics every breath in the freezing night. She needs that photo if she is ever to prove to them that they are hers. But now, gone. Naomi studies everything. She sorts June's past like evidence in a transgression case. Her intrepid spirit tells her, June is hiding something. She's following a trail, court documents, shelter sign-in sheets, old yearbooks. One afternoon at the courthouse, Naomi pores over court records, terminated parental rights, sealed adoption files. She uncovers 2 names that have June as parent. One matches the approximate birth date of Kenneth, the other unknown. She types both names into the state adoption database. The first returns a match, Kenneth, born in 1995. The second returns nothing. A missing twin. Naomi's pulse quickens, a hidden child. Madison. Naomi contacts an old courthouse archivist. He reveals a sealed record about June's unauthorized relinquishment of a second child in 1997. No record of adoption, he says, voice strained. Case was dropped. Child unaccounted for. Naomi's fingers tremble as she notes the date. She knows Kennedy's age and wonders, a baby 2 years after Kenneth? A lost sister. Naomi pieces together the second identity, Madison. Naomi reaches out to Kenneth with a fake case file, invites him to talk. He's reluctant but curious. They meet after work at a diner. Naomi shows him court-signed documents, June's name, parental rights terminated, names. His breath hitches. On the page, beside Kenneth's name, is the other now crossed out in red. She asks quietly, Do you know anyone born in 97 who vanished? Kenneth's jaw clenches. He has never searched for birth certificates. He looks at her, worried. That's not possible. But inside, something unravels. Meanwhile, Madison dedicates herself more and more to the shelter where June sleeps under the Nickerson Bridge. She brings blankets, hot cocoa, blankets. One morning, June emerges with 2 blankets instead of 1. The second one wrapped tightly around a photograph. The same photo. Canon camera workers once shot the image for a community campaign. June took a copy. But that day, she cradled only 1 copy instead of 2. Something snapped in Milwaukee. She dropped one. Now, she gingerly places both blankets in her bag. She walks out before Madison can say anything. Madison approaches when June boards a bus west. Wait, she calls. June halts, but doesn't turn. You can thank you for the warm clothes. Tears pool in June's eyes. Madison holds out her own blanket. June smiles weakly. Thank you. Then June boards and disappears down the road. Madison touches the second blanket. Something resonates a maternal nostalgia she can't place. That same night, Kenneth gasps awake to a dream, June as a mother, handing him a photograph, tears in her eyes. He rushes to his guitar, begins to strum the lullaby. It breaks him open. Madison, at her desk, stares at the same lullaby notations in her own handwriting. She's fond of music. Lines match. She checks her computer files, song drafted when she was 13. Kenneth, a version when he was 17. It's the same melody. The bridge, the chorus. 2 halves of the same childhood. The lullaby becomes their shared secret, even as neither knows it. Naomi, digging further, realizes one document still missing, a certain deposition from 1998 in which June attempted to regain custody, referencing 2 children, one lost to adoption, one to foster care. She files a motion. She tracks down the judge's file. Inside is the photograph. She holds it close. It shows 2 children and a woman smiling holding them. One of the children looks like Kenneth. The other like Madison. Her pulse races as she knows this is the proof. Naomi reaches out again, sets a meeting with Madison at the shelter and with Kenneth at the diner. They both arrive at the same time, Naomi holding the photograph. It looks more like abduction than reunion. They stare. Naomi explains June needs them, they are siblings. Kenneth's breath empties out. Madison shakes her head. Tears fall. Both hearts tremble at Europe's walnut and blue light memory. They request time, retreat to their separate rooms to think. Naomi keeps digging. She follows June's steps. She tracks her last vehicle. She meets an old friend who once drove June across state lines during the custody battle. He reveals June spoke of protecting them. He admits that June left with both children, but then suffered a breakdown. He claims she insisted on separating them to hide them from their father, from the press, from danger. And she lost them. Naomi's hands shake when she reads the transcript. June, protective, fearful of someone close to her wanting the children. She spoke of Kenneth and another. Naomi hears it. Madison. Kenneth returns home. He digs into old keepsakes, finds adoption papers, old teddy bears, each has June's knitting. He notices bloom stitched on the collar, same as the photograph. He remembers sleepovers under a quilt Mom made. He starts to cry, first time in years. He picks up his sleeping bag. It's June's handiwork. He smells her perfume. He runs outside, breathing cold air. He looks at the sky and whispers, Mom. The word trembles out. Madison finds the bus ticket torn in half, her name on one side, date on the other. She folds both halves, registry numbers. She calls Naomi. She meets at the bridge where June slept. Naomi hands her the photograph, sealed copy. Madison follows Naomi up the embankment. The photograph shows June smiling at both children. Her heart leaps. She crouches, touches the printed picture. That's me, she whispers. Naomi nods. Madison looks at the bridge beneath. She traces the rust stains. She pictures June there. She imagines her as a mother. Her throat tightens. Meanwhile, Kenneth has crashed at Naomi's house. Naomi shows him a timeline. June's eviction 2002, welfare file closed Kenneth age 7, Madison aged 5. Court motions 2003. They realize they must confront June to fill the blanks. Kenneth and Madison text each other at midnight, tomorrow. Bridge. Noon. Noon. Sunlight filters off rain-soaked pavement. Naomi stands witness as Kenneth and Madison face June beneath the bridge. June's head is down. Her hands clutch at a plastic tote where the original photo resides. She looks smaller than they remember defeated. Kenneth steps forward. Mom? June lifts her eyes. Face streaming tears. Madison's breath hitches. They stare two opposite reactions, fear and longing. The photograph trembles in June's shaking hands. They both rush in. Kenneth hugs June. Madison wavers then follows. Their bodies shake in silent embrace. June's sobs shake them all. June whispers, I'm sorry. They don't know what she will say next. Naomi watches as the three tremble in the tunnel, rain echoing overhead. The photograph slips from June's hands and lands at her feet. Naomi picks it up. She slips out of the triangle, tears in her own eyes. The town below the bridge seems to stop. In that sliver of world, they are parents, children, siblings again tied by a lullaby, a lost photograph, a secret that nearly crushed them all. June takes a deep breath, her voice hoarse. There's more. The air under the bridge thickens as June begins to speak, her voice cracked from years of silence. Kenneth and Madison sit on either side of her now, close, but still uncertain. The cold has sunk into their clothes, but none of them seem to feel it. June stares straight ahead, not at her children, as if looking directly at them might make her disappear. There was someone else, she says, almost in a whisper. A man I trusted. A man I loved once. Before everything went bad. He said we'd raise you together. But after you were born, he changed. He wanted control. Her fingers tremble as she clasps them in her lap. He said no one could ever know you were mine. Kenneth stiffens. Madison tilts her head slightly. June goes on. He was someone important. Not just in my life. In this town. He didn't want scandal. So I agreed to split you two up. He arranged the adoptions. I never even signed the papers. I was forced out. They made me disappear. You were taken. And then I lost everything. I tried to fight, but he had lawyers. Influence. And when I came back here, no one believed me anymore. Kenneth is silent, processing. Madison's voice finally breaks the stillness. Who is he? June doesn't answer right away. He's still here, she says. Still walking around with everyone thinking he's some savior. Naomi, watching from a short distance, already suspects the answer. She's heard whispers about a sealed record tied to a powerful community figure, someone who had ties to child services, adoption agencies, and a law firm that folded quietly in the early 2000s. She looks at June. Was it someone on the council? June nods once. He never left. He made sure I stayed away. Made sure no one would ever believe a broken woman living under a bridge. Kenneth looks like he's going to be sick. I want to know his name. June doesn't say it. She can't. But she reaches into her tote and hands Naomi another envelope. Inside are documents Naomi had never seen, copies of letters June wrote to agencies, photos of bruises, transcripts of ignored reports. All pointing to the same man, a man currently running for mayor. Naomi's breath catches. She looks at the name. Lawrence Denton, she says out loud. Madison repeats it, as if it tastes bitter. That's the man who donated to the shelter every Christmas. Kenneth, furious, kicks a loose rock across the concrete. That's the man who got me adopted by the Purnells. The ones who never let me ask about my real parents. The ones who burned my baby pictures. Madison turns to June. Why didn't you tell someone? Why not scream it from the rooftops? June's eyes well up. I did. But when no one listens, your voice starts to vanish. And after a while, you start to believe them. That you deserve to be invisible. Naomi steps forward. You're not invisible anymore. Later that night, Naomi files a petition to unseal the records tied to June's children, citing the new evidence. The clerk pushes back. Too much time has passed. But Naomi is relentless. She builds a case, gathers statements. Kenneth and Madison both submit sworn affidavits. The momentum begins. Denton, meanwhile, catches wind of the movement against him. At a private fundraiser, he's all smiles, shaking hands. But behind the scenes, his legal team is already pulling files, silencing old contacts, shutting doors. His assistant warns him that Naomi has the original photograph, clear, dated, stamped with metadata. She found the originals. And she's not alone. Denton calls a contact at City Hall, trying to push Naomi's investigation off the rails. But the story is already leaking. An anonymous tip shows up in a local paper. Mayoral candidate connected to illegally separated siblings, allegations of coerced adoption. The editor holds it, but not for long. Kenneth and Madison begin to meet more regularly now. Slowly, a sibling relationship starts to form. They share childhood scars, their different but similarly painful upbringings. Kenneth takes Madison to the tree in the park where he buried a box of toys as a kid. "I used to think someone was missing when I looked at these," he says. Madison smiles softly. "Maybe I was." June begins staying indoors again. Naomi helps her apply for assisted housing. The shelter volunteers offer support. June meets a therapist. It's not easy. Years of trauma don't disappear. But she begins the slow, jagged climb towards stability. Then, a breakthrough. A nurse at a local clinic recognizes June's name and connects it with a closed file from a children's hospital years ago. It confirms June as mother to both Kenneth and Madison, using her blood type and early intake forms. Naomi finally has what she needs, definitive proof. She calls a press conference. Kenneth and Madison are both there. So is June, standing behind them, nervous but resolute. Naomi presents the case, the falsified adoption documents, the coerced court orders, the sealed depositions. She accuses Denton directly. Reporters are stunned. Flashbulbs pop. Denton's office releases a statement denying all accusations, calling the event a political smear. But the tide has turned. The next day, June's story hits local and regional headlines. The media digs deeper. Denton's past gets dredged up: complaints, inconsistencies, a mysterious payout to a now-deceased judge. Whispers that had been buried come back with force. Naomi receives a message late at night. A man who claims he was a social worker assigned to June's case. "I couldn't stop it," he says, voice trembling on the voicemail. "I tried. They told me to bury it. Told me if I talked, I'd lose everything." Naomi saves the recording. Another piece added to the puzzle. Madison begins writing a memoir of the experience, detailing her fragmented memories of foster care, her first inkling that something didn't fit. Kenneth writes music again, real music, about family, lost time, and forgiveness. June contributes by helping at the shelter. Every step she takes now is one toward reclaiming her voice. A week later, Denton is arrested. Naomi's evidence is handed over to the state attorney. Charges are pending, but they include obstruction, fraud, and child endangerment. He's released on bail but resigns from the mayoral race. His name is stripped from campaign signs overnight. The town reacts with a mix of rage and relief. Many feel complicit. Some remember June from PTA days. They bring flowers, apologies. June doesn't want pity, but she does want acknowledgement. And for the first time in years, she's being seen. Kenneth and Madison decide to move in together platonically, as siblings rediscovering the lost years. They begin searching old town archives, looking for pictures of their family before the separation. Madison finds one, a school picnic in 1999. A woman's hand on Kenneth's shoulder. A toddler held in her other arm. June. They frame the photo. On the anniversary of their reunion, Naomi hosts a small gathering at her home. June sits between her children, who now refer to her freely as Mom. There's laughter. Tears. Talk of a future not shackled to silence. Kenneth strums his guitar. Madison hums the lullaby they both remembered. Naomi listens, hand over her heart. And June smiles, not the haunted, nervous smile she wore in the shelter, but one full of peace. Full of love. Full of home. The story that began in shame and secrecy ends in light. With 3 lives rebuilt from the wreckage and a truth no longer hidden beneath a bridge. The quiet after the storm felt unfamiliar. The town had been rattled to its bones, truth peeled from shadow, reputations shattered, names once whispered with respect now spoken with disdain. But in the silence that followed, something else stirred. Reclamation. Healing. The slow process of building not from scratch, but from buried foundations that had never really broken, only been forgotten. June walked every morning now. Her routine was simple: down the hill past the shelter, across the park where she used to take her children when they were toddlers, and toward the new community garden Madison had helped build. She wasn't invisible anymore. People greeted her. Some even apologized. She never asked for that, but she accepted it. The community had shifted in the wake of the Denton revelations. Public hearings were called. Investigations launched into local adoption agencies. Naomi, now widely respected for her work, was invited to lead an oversight committee on family law reform. She accepted with caution. Justice isn't loud, she told them. It's consistent. Kenneth and Madison settled into a rhythm. Their new home was modest, with creaking floorboards and windows that stuck, but it felt safe. They split chores, argued over groceries, and spent evenings sharing memories they never had together. Kenneth wrote music, slowly recording a concept album titled Under the Bridge. Madison kept writing her memoir. She called it 2 names, one mother. They invited June over weekly for dinner. The first time, she barely touched her food. The second, she laughed. By the third, she brought a photo album, what little she had salvaged. Torn corners, faded colors, but each image a doorway back to what once was. They spent hours labeling faces, naming birthdays, making timelines. It didn't fix everything, but it was more than they had. The town held a ceremony for reform, a symbolic act, but meaningful. Naomi gave a speech, standing beside Kenneth, Madison, and June. This isn't just about one family, she said. It's about the systems we build, the voices we ignore, the damage we pretend we don't see. But also it's about how truth survives, how it finds its way back. June didn't speak publicly, but she stood tall, arms around both of her children. And in that still moment, the weight lifted. Not completely. Not forever. But enough. Then came the final envelope. It arrived at Naomi's office without a return address. Inside, a single photograph. Denton, much younger, standing beside a woman Naomi didn't recognize until she did. It was June, smiling, but with a tension in her eyes. She wore a hospital bracelet. The timestamp matched the date of Madison's birth. Tucked behind it, a court transcript. It had been sealed, but someone had gotten to it. It revealed what no one knew, not even June. That Denton had not only coerced the adoption process, but had altered the birth records. He had paid for Madison to be placed under a different identity entirely, erasing June's name from the maternal section. The full weight of his manipulation was even darker than they'd imagined. Naomi debated telling June. She ultimately decided to. June sat with the document, quietly, for nearly an hour. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. He wanted me to disappear. But I'm still here. They submitted the document as part of a renewed civil case. Though Denton was already facing criminal charges, this added fuel to the fire. More victims came forward. A pattern of coercion and silence emerged, and the system Denton once hid behind began to crack. In court, June testified. Her voice didn't tremble. She described the night she was told her daughter had died in custody, only to learn years later it had been a lie. She told the court how she'd waited under bridges not just for warmth, but for redemption. When the verdict came, it was clear. The court recognized the wrongs committed. Denton's remaining assets were seized, his power dismantled. June was granted formal legal recognition as mother to both Kenneth and Madison retroactive. Symbolic, yes, but deeply significant. That night, Madison lit a candle at the kitchen table. Kenneth placed the photograph beside it June with the two of them as toddlers. They sat silently. Then June reached across and lit a second candle. "For the years we lost," she said. "And for the years we're taking back." As spring arrived, so did new beginnings. The shelter where June once stayed was converted into a family resource center. Kenneth taught guitar classes for youth. Madison started a support group for adult adoptees seeking their origins. June volunteered as a liaison for women navigating the system she once fell through. Naomi helped secure funding to expand the initiative statewide. On the first anniversary of their reunion, they returned to the park for a small gathering. Friends, supporters, people from the town who'd watched from a distance, but never knew the full truth. Madison stood before them and read a passage from her book in progress. It ended with a single line: "We weren't lost, just misplaced." And no finally weary home. The applause was quiet, respectful, earnest. After the crowd dispersed, June walked alone to the base of the bridge where she had once slept. She placed a flower there, not in mourning, but in memory. She looked up. Light streamed between the steel beams, and for the first time in decades, the shadows did not scare her.